Hi, my name is Niyati, and I met Tom in 2012, which is the year that I moved to Portland. And before that, I was living in South Africa for 14 years. And while I was living there, I came across a Zulu greeting that reminds me a lot of what Tom has meant for me in my writing. And the greeting goes like this. It's Sawubona, which means I see you. And then the other person responds and says Sikona, which means I am here. And the deeper meaning of that greeting is really that until you see me, I do not exist. And it is through the act of being seen that we call each other into existence. And I feel that's really what Tom has done for me. And before I met Tom in my writing, I wasn't even aware how much of myself I left out of my stories. And, you know, being a Dutch Jew originally, the whole notion of staying hidden and invisible is just totally part of my DNA, and also informed how I was writing. But I didn't even know that until I met Tom. And so when I met Tom, I felt he really saw the stories that lived inside me and made me feel that he wanted my stories and he wanted the depth of my stories, and not just the stories, but my inner worlds as well that, you know, that go with those stories. And so I feel like, you know, Tom, through seeing me in that way, he called my stories into existence, and in that he called me into existence and allowed me and gave me the courage to make myself visible in this world. And that's deeply moving experience for me, and I'm deeply grateful for that.
Hi, I'm Kevin Meyer. I've been in Tom Spanbauer's Dangerous Writing workshop since late 2003, and that's 15 years. That's a long time. But I've stayed with Tom for that length of time because not only is he an amazing writer, I mean, In the City of Shy Hunters and I Loved You More probably affected me more than any other books I can think of, but he's an incredible teacher. I really believe in what he teaches, and I've never stopped learning from him throughout those entire 15 years. Even when I'm not writing myself, if I'm just absorbing what other people are working on or helping pass on what I've learned from him over the past 15 years, there's always something new every week, every Thursday night. And Tom has a really, really excellent teaching style. You know, he's calm and he's gentle with everyone. He always takes the time to check in with people, and, you know, getting your work critiqued is hard, but he makes sure that everybody's doing okay at the end of it and they understand why, you know, we keep pushing to make your writing better. And that's the other part of it that's really important, is he holds your feet to the fire. There's no shortcuts in Tom's workshop. You know, he teaches a lot of techniques that, you know, maybe on the surface sound kind of jargony. We've got things like on the body or step back and step up. But these techniques boil down to maybe two things. One is that writing is really hard work, so it's pretty common to want to do the easy thing. But Tom is always going to teach you to do the extra work, to do the hard thing, you know, in terms of the writing technique itself, or what's hard for you emotionally. I mean, that's why it's called dangerous writing. And the other part of it is how to get closer to yourself, to figure out who you are as a writer. You know, we all have decades of third-person omniscient writing sound buzzing around in our heads, but Tom's going to ask you to do the hard work to figure out who you are as a writer, as a voice. And finally, Tom's created such an amazing community. You know, I've met so many incredible people and incredible writers over the years, and Tom has influenced so many people. What's really amazing is that a lot of those people he's influenced have gone on to influence others. You know, when you look at Lydia Yuknovich or other people like that. Last year, when Tom was awarded the Stuart H. Holbrook Literary Legacy Award, I was in the crowd, and it was just amazing to watch that standing ovation go up at the end of his speech, to see how many people he's touched over the years. And I'm just one of them. Tom is one of the most important people in my life. He's taught me not only to be a better writer, but also a better human being. And for that, I thank you, Tom.
Mama, when she'd ride that horse, buried out in Wilson Fields, Mama, tell me all she thought. Mama, tell me all how riding feels. And I thought, not yet. Then when Mama got to want, no one ever rode that horse, till one night I stole her key, and I did ride it all night till dawn, when I thought, not yet. It looks an ugly world out there, of girl guides and disease and war. I love my little velvet bed, I never want to leave it anymore, at least not yet. Charlie was the first I called, Charlie was the first I did to lay an anchor in my heart. He's running his fingers down inside of my legs when I go. Not yet.
everybody. Welcome to the podcast. Thank you for joining us for what is a really special episode of On the Block Radio. Well, let's be honest. I hope all of the episodes are special and unique in their own way, but I'm very excited about this episode. It's a bit of a departure for us. Our guest this week is Tom Spanbauer, the author and founder of the Dangerous Writing Workshop. Tom has published 5 novels: Faraway Places, The Man Who Fell in Love with the Moon, In the City of Shy Hunters, Now is the Hour, and the recently released from local Hawthorne Books, I Loved You More. I became aware of Tom's writing, 8 years or so ago, when producer of the show, my comrade and cohort and inspiration and partner in this life, Celeste Gervich, introduced me to his work. I had heard him on NPR and kind of been aware of Tom and his reputation here in the area before that, but I really started reading his stuff and fell in love with it about 6-8 years ago. And I read The Man Who Fell in Love with the Moon and then In the City of Shy Hunters. And I'm telling you, I was blown away. Never, ever, ever had I read such gripping and immediate prose. I wasn't prepared for what I found in those books. The immediacy, the fragility, the ability to dive down into the depths and the complexities of a human soul. Here's this guy, right, who's a kid from Idaho, comes from an abusive and distant family, who then goes off into the world to find himself and discover his sexuality. There I am, a dopey, hopelessly heterosexual kid from New York City. What do I know from a gay kid from Idaho? And yet here I am reading these books, feeling as if somehow I'm reading my own story. Somehow I'm reading somebody who's narrating something that I recognize as partly me. It was that ability for me to somehow see myself in a story that, on the surface at least, was so different from my own that really drew me into Tom's work. I had to find out what that was. How could a guy be writing about something so seemingly different from me, and yet it was resonating with me? I think it had something to do, and I still do think it has something to do with the authenticity of the writing. Tom is a guy that moves away from artifice and from these classical structures of what we're supposed to do in a piece of writing, and really helps people drill down to the depths of that story that only you can tell. He is not only a fantastic writer, but a wonderful teacher as well. And as a professor of writing, I can tell you that it's a difficult thing to help build and hold and create safe, liberated spaces for students to have the ability to open up and allow a piece of writing to grow and flourish and change. We write these things, especially creatively, and we hold them very dear. They speak profound truths, and we share our creativity and open ourselves up. It's a very vulnerable thing. And to feel safe enough to do that and then receive instruction and receive criticism is a very, very difficult thing to do on behalf of any writing student. And any of you who have been through a writing program of any kind know that. It's difficult as well to be the person that's expending the energy to create that safe and liberated space. And Tom's students will tell you that he is a man who is so gentle and so encouraging as to always leave you with a sense of that it's going to be okay, right? That where you're going and the trust that you can have for your own instincts will lead you out of the darkness and into a new understanding of yourself, and into a beautiful understanding of yourself that through your own writing will help you transform anything from your past into something that now holds dignity and truth for you. He's a beautiful man, Tom Spanbauer, and we're happy to have him on the show. There's a few reasons we wanted to run this show this week. And I want to talk to you a little bit about them now. The first is that, we'd wanted to have Tom on the show for a while. We recorded this particular interview last year when Tom visited the school where I teach to read from his new book, I Loved You More. We interviewed him at the time, and we'd been waiting to bring this interview on the Block Radio, waiting for the right time, and we felt this was the right week for a number of reasons. First, this is the episode that follows on the heels of last week's episode with Patty Davis. We loved doing that episode. We've got a lot of great feedback from people that said thank you for introducing us to her, and not dwelling so much on her background and family. Patty is an amazing author. It was a great interview, and we were really happy to speak with her. Inevitably, because of the timing last week, the episode was overshadowed a little bit, or a lot of bit, by the death of Patty's mother, Nancy Reagan, and that inevitably led to a lot of conversation among our audience and among our team here about the Reagans and about their influence. And we spoke to this last week a little bit, but I wanted to mention it again here because it was very much a part of why we decided to run the Tom interview this week. A lot of folks wrote us and spoke about their pain of living through the Reagan legacy in terms of their silence on HIV/AIDS up till like 1986, 87. There's a wonderful book called And the Band Played On that I think everyone who hasn't read should read, that takes you through the history of that time period of what it was like to be alive then. Tom's writing, especially in The City of Shy Hunters, is another book that I think everyone should read if you want to see what it was like to be a gay man living in the 1980s when most of your nation was turning its back on you, even as this terrifying disease was decimating your community. So there's a lot of hurt feelings and a lot of anger and a lot of sadness around the Reagan legacy with HIV/AIDS. Now, Patty Davis has nothing to do with this, right? We are not responsible for who our parents are and for how they behave in the world. And nobody more than Tom Spanbauer knows that. However, because of the nature of that episode and because of the nature of not wanting to focus that episode on this issue, but on Patty and her life and work, we wanted to speak to it somehow and not let that legacy remain silent. And so our way of doing that is to run Tom's episode this week, not as a response to Patty's episode, but as a companion to it. The next reason that we are playing this episode this week has to do with Tom himself. You know, here's a guy that has left such a profound legacy, has done so much for this community, for this writing community, and for the community at large. But as we age and as we increase in the complexities of our own relationship to our bodies, sometimes it runs us down. And as I was saying a second ago, it takes a lot of energy to do this work. It takes a lot of energy to be this kind of teacher and this kind of writer. And so Tom's been on the mend lately. He's had some health issues and has had to step away from the teaching table and sit on the sidelines while his body recuperates a little bit. And I think all of us, if we're sensitive people, if we're fragile people, if we're caring people that want to do something in the world that matters and that reaches other folks, we wonder, especially in these times, has it worked? What has our life meant? Has it mattered to people? Has our influence mattered? Has our teaching mattered? Has our presence mattered? Will people notice if we're gone, right? And the answer for Tom Spanbauer is a profound and unanimous yes from this community and the community at large. Peppered through this episode are anecdotes from Tom's students, from people who have been affected by Tom's life and work, speaking to exactly how Tom has helped change them. You know, a show about transformation is so happy to bring a guy like Tom Spanbauer on because this is an individual who has had so much raw courage to be authentic and fragile in front of the rest of us and to continue to do the difficult work of writing to himself, to honor himself and to find himself, and showing us all that difficult, scrappy, painful, word by word work is worth it and yields some beautiful results if we are present for it, and allow it to take us as far into ourselves as it can. So this is another reason that we felt that we should run this episode this week. So this episode is not just an interview with a great writer and a leader and a teacher in our community. It's a love letter to a man who deserves all of our love and affection, who's given so much of himself and allowed us to see pathways to find ourselves as well. It's also a love letter to the entire gay community. There's so much work that continues, that needs to be done, that continues to need to be done regarding building bridges, providing people with safe access, and creating communities where people of all stripes, of all different ways of knowing and loving, of all different ways of being, can feel safe, accepted, loved, and integrated into a world that is big enough to hold them. So Tom Spanbauer, thank you. We love you. I love you. I'm so glad I had this opportunity to speak with you, and I'm so glad that On the Block Radio has had an opportunity to use our show as a platform for your community to mirror back to you all that you are and all that you have done for us over the past several decades. All right, folks, we love you, and we'll see you on the other side.
Welcome to On the Block with Andrew Gurovich, a podcast about authentic people doing beautiful things. Enjoy the show.
A brief bio on Tom. Tom grew up in Idaho. He served in the Peace Corps in Kenya. He was the superintendent of 5 buildings on East 5th Street in New York. Received his MFA in fiction from Columbia. In 1991, Tom came to Portland, where, among other things, he developed the beloved Dangerous Writing series in his basement. He's helped multitudes of people in this town and beyond get their books published, including people like Chuck Palahniuk, Lydia Yuknavitch, Monica Drake, Chelsea Kane, Susie Vitello, Cheryl Strayed, among many others. His novels include Faraway Places, The Man Who Fell in Love with the Moon, In the City of Shy Hunters, and Now is the Hour. His new book is entitled I Love You More and is available from Hawthorne Books, online, and at your local bookstore. Tom, welcome.
Thanks. It's nice to be here.
Sage, welcome as well.
Well, thank you very much.
I want to get right into it. We have a brief time with you, and one of the things in doing my research for speaking with you today that I thought was rather amusing is that when people introduce you, they always read that little introduction that I just gave as almost an afterthought. It's almost as if the people that know you think that Tom Spanbauer they know is not contained in this list of details. Huh. But that they immediately want to read that list. Our colleague Lydia Yuknavitch introduced you at PALS recently and read this list and said, when people introduce somebody, they give this list, and this list is not the Tom Spanbauer I want to introduce. And so what do you think about that?
Well, those are some high points in my life. Certainly, Kenya was a big change. Well, probably the major one of the most major things that's ever happened to me. Because, I was an Idaho boy for 23 years, and as soon as I had the wherewithal, I left Idaho, and 3,000 miles later, I was in my father's scariest place in deep, dark Africa. And so that was a big deal. And then to be living in New York City and going to Columbia and being a super at the same time, I mean, that isn't the typical kind of Columbia student. So right. That's something too. And then, moving here to Portland, and everybody thinks I have dangerous writing in my basement. I do now, but it's the house I live in now. Before I lived in Southwest, and it was in my dining room table.
Okay.
So I don't know, other things that are important. I can't really. Can you think of any? Sage, how about you?
Well, more what I mean to say is, let me ask this: why did you go to Africa right from Idaho?
Yeah, I did.
And did you go there to get out of Idaho?
Well, it was 1969, and the Vietnam War was on, and I didn't want to go to Vietnam. Yeah. But mostly I was in love with John Kennedy, and I really, this idea of Peace Corps, of this whole altruistic idea of helping the world, or, I was just so full of it. I was a full-blown hippie. And I got to travel. I got to get out, and the first thing that happened is because I was from a rural background, they gave me a job managing 500,000 acres and put me in Maasai land. Wow. And the Maasai are difficult people. they called me boy for the whole time I was with them. And I was basically a taxi driver, and the actual the program that I was supposed to be with never was funded. So I was just kind of in the middle of Maasai Land, hauling people around so that they could get to the store. And it wasn't very fulfilling to me. And I changed jobs after about 6 months and got a job of being a crew boss. And I hired 12 men, and we built 2 workshops for in a place called Mathari Valley, which was Cardboard City. Mm-hmm. And so I actually built 2 workshops that could hire up to 20 women, so that these people in this slum area could have some work. But this was a great job because we all worked together, we all dug together, and then I got these guys a great wage per day, and then I got them a dinner as well. And so I was really proud, really happy of all this. Of course, I got to know these people really well, and they got to know me, and all that, Wakamba, Kikuyu, African American, all stuff all went away, and we were all just people digging a hole. It was great.
Wow. Your writing, to me, displays frequently a real deep understanding, and this maybe connects to what you're talking about, for a love and an understanding of indigenous peoples. I was wondering if you can talk about where that came from, where that love for indigenous people, did it start in Idaho?
Well, I think it started it started because my father was a racist. Mm-hmm. And, if he could have had slaves, he would have had slaves. And he was a pretty brutal man, and I wasn't like him, and I didn't want to be like him. Mm-hmm. So I think that's where it started. We used to have Mexican laborers that would work for us. And, there would be 12 to 14 people living in a 2-room house right next to the feedlots. And they had they had running water, but they didn't have a toilet. And these people were always just so looked down upon. And I just couldn't get it, because these people were Catholics, like my family was Catholic. Mm-hmm. And they were really the only people that around me that I could be friends with. So all my friends were young Mexican boys and girls, and so I am really early on connected with these people. First out of because my father wouldn't, because it was so taboo, and second of all, these were really cool people, and most of my neighbors were uptight Mormon kids, and so I really came to love them. So it started there, but then of course the Peace Corps, wow, and then I got back from the Peace Corps, and all of a sudden I realized that not only were there Native Americans around me, but they were all around me. I really hadn't seen the Native American community while I lived in Idaho. It took me to go to Africa to see them. And then Sage knows this, my brother Clyde, we became, Clyde Hall is his name, and we fancied each other at a certain point, and we became blood brothers, and I became very, very close to him. And he's had a lot to do with my life, with my coming out, and my whole love of indigenous people, and so it's mostly been that's been the process of how I got to this, and of course I write about it because it's been a turning point in my soul to run into this man. That he taught me that everything is alive instead of everything being dead. So he was a wonderful influence.
You talked in the reading today about the importance of reading your work aloud. There was a person who asked you a question to a community of people that you love and you trust. And I want to talk a little bit about Dangerous Writers, not only about the process and how it works for someone that's coming in, but I kind of want to start on the other side of it and talk about what the community has become. We attended the event, what was it called at Sage the other day? And,
it's Portland at Heart.
Portland at Heart,
Blue Monk.
Yeah, the Colony put together. And it was phenomenal, and to be a part of these groups of people that clearly love one another and trust one another, and then can read their work to one another, and then also share it with the public. is a pretty profound thing. And Sage read a story that was phenomenal, and we were talking today a little bit about how when he saw aspects of it hit the audience, he kind of felt it for the first time. And it was very much like what you were talking about with having done that. So can you maybe talk a little bit about not only the importance of that for yourself as a writer? We were talking before about, storytelling has been something that has always been oral, right? For the longest time, storytelling was something that was a verbal communication. It was told between you. And even if you were telling stories to yourself, you said them out loud. It's only very recently that people read quietly. And so to me, I was just struck by a very ancient notion when you were talking about this. And then I guess the second part of the question is, how important are those thriving communities for writers, when writers can write and see that there's people out there that want to come listen to it and want to participate in them? I think that inspires them to write and share more. People care about the stories that they're writing.
Well, Sage wrote this piece that he read last Sunday, and I had kind of heard it, but he had changed it for the reading, and I heard it was a great success. And Sage just told me the reaction to it, but you still have to read it to me. So we've got a date for Sage to read this to me. But this idea of community, it's pretty interesting to me because. When you meet with people around a table and you start writing dangerously, immediately everybody goes to that place that's hurt, that place inside them that's secret, that taboo in them that they're trying to get over. And so immediately, when people go there, immediately you have this incredibly human bond. It's like the Dalai Lama, that we look at each other and we look deeply into each other's eyes and be kind, because inside there's a great battle waging. So all of us know that there's a great battle waging in us. And so what happens is we immediately have this connection. The thing that's really happened to me is, since I've been sick with AIDS, I haven't really been a very social person. And it's only been since Sage came along in the class, and he's this young, beautiful Jupiter that has all this energy.
I'll take it.
This my class, there was always this class, but when we'd get together, I was always just kind of shy, and people were shy, but we knew we loved each other. But now that Sage has entered the picture, we have a big, thriving, heartfelt community that, we have outings, we have, liquor drinking contests, we have, we have food, and it's just this incredible, this community, and it's this community is so important because, when I look around the table at the disparate people that are in there, these are people that are just coming off the street. I'm not saying you have to give me a sample writing or something. These are people who are just coming off the street and that are in love with writing somehow, and then they sit down and they start getting involved in this, and you can just see the light go on inside them, and it's like, finally, I'm being heard, or finally this story of mine that has been just mine, now I have a group of people to share it with. And because I can share it with, there's something alchemical that happens, and people feel seen, they feel felt, and they don't feel as not autonomous, but they feel seen, not that ordinary kind of guy passing on the street. They just feel like there's a very important part of them, the part that lives deeply inside of them, is being seen, and because of that, they're being seen.
It's interesting to me about that, as it's grown, has been it used to be that people would come into the Dangerous Writings Workshop. I've been teaching with Tom for the last 7 years, and before that, for a number of years, I was in the group and then took a break and came back to teach. And what I always saw was that Tom set the tone by this sort of the same tone in the reading, this sort of vulnerability that kind of draws you in, and then you went, oh, this is really genuine, it's real. And he's listening. There's someone there listening to me, and I know he's going to be very kind to me. And And that's still true. That still happens. But what's happened is that the group now, it's become more nuanced. We've built on those skills, and Tom's taught that to us on a certain level. And so a lot of dangerous writers that leave go out and become teachers, and they get, or editors, or they become this very carefully constructed dissector of language and emotion. And it starts with Tom, but then now there's a bunch of us that have caught that, and we're doing it. And so now when someone comes into the dangerous writing, there is a room full of people doing that. And I think people, you would, in another group, you would see people come in and just have to put in their opinion so they get heard, and they're seen. And in this, people listen. They're really careful because it's somewhat formidable. It's to get that full table of people, and to have that attention put on you for a second. It's wonderful, and it's formidable.
Thanks for listening to On the Block. Talk is cheap, ours is free. Be right back.
I met Tom Spanbauer at Wordstock in 2006. I was in a room with a few hundred people. I responded to the prompt, "The moment after you were different." The thing I wrote about was the secret I was holding on to. My secret was my suicide attempt. When he asked for volunteers to read, I raised my hand. There were people around me. They didn't write anything down. They looked at me like I had the courage they didn't have. I was so scared. Tom with his spectacles. He looked wise. He looked like he could change my life. Tom is the kind of man who gives you courage. Just by looking at him, you know he's going to listen to you, and he's going to give you time and space and all of his heart. He and I in that room. What I remember most is his heart holding up the secret of my suicide with all those people. I felt safe. I felt cut open, my bleeding heart broken there for all to see. He said things I didn't understand, phrases like throat clearing. And the object, the knife, how even though it was scary, I had loved that object. And then it was over and he was on to the next person. But there was something in me that woke up that afternoon. My body felt it, some kind of light burn in my chest. When I walked up to him, it was with purpose. I didn't really know then what this feeling was, but I know I wanted more of it. This was some kind of sign, and I had to listen to the sign. I had to go up to him. And I did. I asked him, "How do we do this like all the time?" And he looked me over, and he saw my heart break, and he took a while to say what he said back to me. "Why don't you come to my basement on Thursdays?" And 10 years later, I'm still there. Knowing Tom hasn't just improved my writing, it's improved the way I teach photo and video to high school students. He's made me a better listener. He's made me a better person. He's shown me an open-hearted way of living. Thank you, Tom.
Hi, I am Acacia Blackwell, and I have been with the Dangerous Writers since about Thanksgiving, so 4 months. I am very much the baby. I was brought in by Brad Rosen, and I remember the night before I came to the group the first time, he sent me a text saying, "Are you ready for this?" And the answer was no, but it, was not the kind of opportunity that you pass up. And at the same time, I was not even done with my first year in my MFA program, which I thought would like work for me or be this upside or give me this edge. I was wrong about that, but I did not figure that out right away. So I did a few weeks in the pre-pond scum sector. But after that, I had my first sit down with Kevin and Maddie and Tom and Sage. And the first thing I remember Tom saying, and I'll never forget it, is, you're in the right place. And then proceeded with Kevin and Maddie to let me know that I needed to unlearn everything I'd learned in grad school. So that was a sobering moment, but so far it's working. And then I remember they were giving me critique on what I now, 4 months later, know is called redemptive voice. But in my MFA language, I kept saying, yeah, okay, so narrative distance. And it got kind of quiet, and Tom said, you should never be distant as a narrator. And that's the stuff that just sticks with you. Afterwards, Tom came out to the Vern with us and bought me a beer and put his arm around me and said, I hope you know I still love you. And that's just who he is. That's the man I've come to know, even in this really short period of time. And one last thing, last month at the Burnt Tongue, I did my first ever public reading, and I was terrified because I was reading and writing from the sore spot, telling things I thought I might never share with anyone. And that's all because of Tom. So thank you.
We were speaking with Davis the other night after the event, and he said something that I really thought was amazing. He said, Tom gives us the permission to write ourselves. And I thought that was
love
really
that
beautiful.
guy.
Yeah, I do too. I thought that was very beautiful.
Wow.
And then he gives us permission to write ourselves. Can you actually, now that you're on that stage, can you just talk us through the process of someone comes and wants to be a part of the Dangerous Writers? How does that work? How does somebody join, and then how does somebody get out? Is it like the mafia? Are you never out once you're in?
You know what? It's not. We're as formal as all this sounds. We're really small scale and low key. We can't be too big because we just don't have the energy for it.
Yeah.
Schedules and Tom's energy and everything, and so really what it is I'm just keeping an email list and send me an email.
Okay.
It's really it's really that homegrown. It has to be. We can't go much bigger than that just because of our energy levels, and we don't have a lot of space, and it's part of what's kept it mysterious and cool is that we can't have too many people at once, and we're not teaching at a university. We're not. It's very much a homegrown process, and that's what keeps that organic one-on-one quality of the teaching, and why we can go so deep and special is because it's not mass marketable. Although I will give a plug on that, because of that, we're going to put together a video series for sale with a book, with a writing booklet.
Some kind of webinar.
We're gonna do something for that like that by the end of the year, and that way, because there are people who want to come in, and we like I said, we keep it pretty small because we have to, and we want to be able to offer something that's to the larger community. So I'm gonna be interviewing Tom on video, basically with a truncated version of our 3-day workshop. And teaching with Tom, I know the questions to ask, and he'll be, we'll be bantering back and forth about the dangerous writing process.
I'm interested to know how somebody knows. Is it just when a person feels that they're, how does someone decide when they're through the process? How does somebody leave the table? Do you decide that? Is it project-based? Do they decide?
It's usually project-based.
Okay.
When someone has finished their novel, they move on.
Okay.
But it's a group of people, and humanity comes up. I got another job. I can't come on Thursday. My mother is dying. It just things like that happen. So that's pretty much. It's just that normal attrition of being human.
Okay.
It isn't really, I think, final until the book is finished. But we've had a couple people finish their books and then come back.
Really? Yeah, that was going to be my next question.
To write a
for another
second
project.
book. Yeah. There's a way that the community, the table itself, is so close knit now that nobody wants to leave.
Yeah. I can imagine. Sage, you bring up something about using these emerging technologies to not only for dangerous writers, but it made me think of something I wanted to ask you both about how the landscape has changed since your last book came out. I have two things I want to follow with you. I was doing some preparation for our interview and saw you talking about some of the difficulty you had by taking this to some of these big New York houses that are run by these people with a business mind. And I want to ask you about that, especially these labels that, gay literature, queer literature, memoir, not, these things that are meant to try to shelve something and really end up limiting, especially the categories of thought in these people's minds. But I'm blown away that you would have a problem getting a book placed. And so that says something to me about a real sickness in the publishing world, but so that's part of the question. But the other one has to do with how you're adapting, placing the book at Hawthorne, and then using emerging technologies. Maybe Sage's role not only in planning book tour, planning events. You made that wonderful short film that was the book promo. That was one of the best things I've ever seen. Do you remember which one I'm talking about?
Right. That was I helped vision that. That was actually shot and directed by a good friend of ours, Mark Levine, who's a filmmaker. I started working with Hawthorne Books on this book. Through Tom's last couple books, I've been doing little bits of things the publisher wouldn't do, in his bigger publishers, intellectual property rights, some marketing, book tour management, because I know Tom so well. And in this book, because we went with Rhonda at Hawthorne, who has built, I've watched her, I've known her since she started the company and watched her build this small regional publisher up into this big independent force who makes beautiful books. I mean, just gorgeous. Her history. She was a printer just a side note, she was a printer for Fantagraphics books. She was a printer that printed Fantagraphics series for years. And so she knows paper stock. She knows those cool French flaps. I mean, and she's got really good taste in editors and graphic designers. And so she makes these beautiful objects, and we've just been watching her and grow to enough of a point where we felt like she could carry this with Tom, and then Tom could help her, and we could all help each other. And the things she was willing to do for us, the bigger publishers weren't. It just seemed like a natural fit now. And I thought your metaphor was interesting for the publishing industry, because I don't see it as much as a sickness as much as an earthquake. Publishing has been hit by an earthquake called the internet, and they're still adapting, and it's what this probably wouldn't have been as possible 5 years ago as it is now. The ways we're able to reach out and find alternative communities, and not just in the writing world. It's one of the lovely things about Tom, and it kind of goes back to that book trailer, that the conversations the director and I had about what that book trailer could be, because we looked at a lot of book trailers, and book trailers aren't that great. They try to be mini movies and things, and that's not what we wanted. And with working with Rhonda, we had this marketing campaign of, and it kind of goes back to the dangerous writing too, with Tom. If you listen to him talk for 2 minutes, you hear that humanity, and you're going to want to know more. You're going to want to buy that book, and that's the spirit we wanted to come through, and that's the spirit that film was shot in, and that's been our marketing spirit. That's how I approach people. That's how I've been booking things. Like, hey, you should talk to Tom for a couple minutes. You're going to want him to come. So
yeah. Tom, what do you say about that, about just the changes in the publishing world since your last book came out?
It's a different world altogether. It's a totally different world. And I don't think really anybody, it's such a change that anybody in that world really knows what's what. they're just still hanging on to try, maybe this is this, maybe no, it's not this, it's this. So that old structure that was there for such a long time is gone. And when I finished Now Is the Hour, I got a book advance and A, B, C, D, and this time I sent it to 4 or 5 different New York publishers, and I think it's because they just didn't know if they were going to be an entity for another 2 years. Maybe I can't do this. So, and really, in corporations, you think about corporations and what these larger books, these larger houses are really corporations, and in a corporation, everybody's looking for the bottom line, and is this going to sell 50,000 copies? And
the bottom line has dropped out.
And the bottom line has dropped out, and so it's just changed so much, and nobody. I guess this is the point I'm trying to make: is nobody really is willing to take a risk, because nobody knows what it really is going to be in 6 months. So if this is a little bit risky, I'm not going to do it. Before, I could throw Spanbauer in queer literature, and there's X amount of books in queer literature. We can kind of find some kind of algorithm and find out how much we can afford. But that isn't the case now. Queer literature.
Well, the queer bookstores are all closing. All those independent queer bookstores have closed.
Yeah. And that shelf that used to be queer literature isn't anymore, because that whole idea of sexuality is changing, and gender is changing, and so it's not the forms of things are changing, but also the awareness and the consciousnesses are changing, and nobody really knows what the hell. And so, I just felt that really people were treating me like a bottom line of how much money can he make me, and if he's any kind of risk, I'm not going to take him on. And so I got this feeling that I was out to pasture, that this woman especially at I probably shouldn't mention it anyway. Anyway, this one woman at this publishing house said, I underlined at least one sentence on every page, but I don't think I'm going to go with this. It's a little too risky. Wow. And so there you go. Nobody's taking a risk. Everybody's corporate, and we're just going to churn out technologically. We know this formula works, and so we're going to print 10,000, 20,000, 100,000 of these kinds of books because we know that works. And anything else we're going to stay away from.
Well, and you find that the editors, we had a wonderful editor take time to kind of talk about why he wasn't going to be able to take the book, and he brought up this really interesting notion that within these publishing houses, the editors still want to take risks, but they only have so much political capital with their marketing department, and they've got to be really careful now, because that bottom line has dropped. Somebody like Tom, who has sold consistently, that consistent line has now dropped, and so all of a sudden, even though they know you're going to do a certain number, that's not enough anymore to warrant the machine picking up.
I just wonder how somebody like Tom is considered an unknown commodity. I mean, you're like the Terry Gilliam of fiction. Like, you just keep churning these things out that are masterpieces. And then they're still...
You're the Terry Gilliam of fiction.
From your lips to God's ears.
I'm wondering, this story is, to me, for aspiring writers or young writers or people without a publishing background, I think this is... can be both a heartwarming and a heartbreaking thing to hear, right? Somebody with established track record of publishing is still facing this kind of nonsense. Yeah. That could be disheartening for somebody, or that could also take a lot of pressure off and realize that that's never going to go away. Well, I have to tell you
that an old roommate of mine from Seattle is now, he's just decided to go, I'm going to say it, he went the Amazon route, and he is outselling Stephen King on Amazon for his horror series, his 6-book horror series that Amazon wrote with him. So that's why the earthquake in the publishing industry, because there's all these unknowns that potentially what used to be, that would have been vanity press. Now, look at Ariel Gore's career. I mean, Ariel started doing zines and her own thing, and everyone balked at that. But she started Hip Mama, got it going on, and that made her a name enough to get in this world now that, you'll sell 10,000 all on your own. Okay, let's take a chance. Let's publish that.
People are going back to building a network of relationships across the country rather than just relying on a person in a marketing office in one of these big houses. Yeah. Well, and you're always going to care about your book more than they do also.
Right. And then you get Rhonda at Hawthorne back to that. She, I think for a long time, she resisted that label of regional publisher. Now it's a huge strength.
Yeah.
It's huge. It's huge because she is such a force for Northwest writers,
I had a friend a long time ago. He was a psychic, but besides being a psychic, he was just Sam Goldsmith to me. He was just he said something really that I've always remembered. He said, "Really, you're only going to get things done through the relationships that you have."
Yeah.
So, it's my connection to you. It's my connection to Sage that will generate the work. It will generate the art. So it's through the personal, through the ways, through the people that surround you, and how you talk and how you live and how you love each other that will create the art. And I've always thought that that's a beautiful thing, and I'm certainly feeling that with Rhonda at Hawthorne Books now.
That's wonderful.
Hey, this is David Gonzalez, and you're listening to On the Block Radio with Andy Gurvitch.
My name's Bradley K. Rosen. I've been a student of Tom for 10 years. What can I say about my man Tom Spanbauer? There's parts in everybody's life where people change you, and Tom has changed me for sure, and countless of other people, not just with his teaching, but the way his life is and his human existence on this planet. He has just brought so much love and trust, and I just can't say enough about how much I love the man. Oh, and did I say what a great dancer he is? Suave. That's it.
Hi, I'm Kate Gray, and this is my love letter to Tom. Tom taught me to star words, to lead with love when I'm reading or teaching, to use horses when writing, so readers can ride into the rhythm of a piece, into the ring of their writing. Tom taught me to touch sentences as if they were sinewy arms, to wrap them around the readers, to hold readers close as you and they go to the scary places, the mystical places, go into messes and come out miraculously. Tom gave me the gift of going first, going to the scary place so the reader never feels alone. You're never alone, Tom. Not ever.
Hi, I'm Gigi Little, and I've been studying with Tom Spanbauer for more than 10 years. And I can honestly say that I wouldn't be the person I am today without Tom. The writing is one thing. I definitely wouldn't be the writer I am without his unique teachings and his nurturing and his support. The school of thought he created with dangerous writing felt revolutionary to me after years of reading books that all sounded the same and always stood 5 steps back from the reader. He created something amazing and then opened it up to generations of young writers, including myself, with a teaching style that made it accessible and reachable. But becoming that writer and being able to stretch myself and have the confidence I have because of it has changed me as a person. I spent most of my life feeling like a loser and kind of being a loser. I don't feel that way anymore.
My name is Kirsten Larson. I was a student of Tom's. I tried to get into Dangerous Writers 10 years before I became a student. Tom referred me to Carolyn Altman, who had a group at the time. She moved away shortly after that, but referred me to the Pinewood Table with Stephen Allred and Joanna Rose. They all spent time in Tom's group, but were very different teachers. I learned from all of them. Tom's legacy is far-reaching. Tom taught me to write a scene. When I first started, he said to me, "This 7 pages is a book." He taught me to write 7 pages where the narrator's feet don't move and to stay right there with the narrator. He said a book is just one scene after the other. The time I spent with him and the very talented writers at the table was magic. I suppose we all came looking for something different, and maybe we all found something different. For me, I consider Tom a literary father figure. The writing that came from the table is so personal. There's a deep intimacy that forms when you share your darkest secrets and listen to others share theirs. I learned just as much listening to him discuss other people's writing. He taught me to listen for what the writer is trying to say and how to get a writer to write more effectively. I modeled my teaching after him. Not the dangerous writer's terminology, but the love. He led us to find our voices, which is a way of finding yourself. How can you not love someone who so gently leads you to yourself? For me, the most magical times in the basement, around that sacred table, happened when Tom told us stories. They came rarely and unexpectedly. We'd put down our papers and pencils, and the room became still. He told us about his childhood in Idaho. He told us about his experiences in the Catholic Church. He told us about his loves, his time in Africa, his MFA, and what it took out of him each time to write his magnificent books. He told us about other writers from the table who came before us and what they meant to him. These beautiful history lessons. I suppose someone could try to teach like he does, use his terminology, for example, but it wouldn't be the same. His love is what made it so special. Tom is a creative force right here in Portland. He's movie star handsome. People are just drawn to him. My time at the table was life-changing. I've seen people come from all over the world to sit with him, even for a short time. There's nothing like having someone love your forming voice, your words. It allows you to start loving your words too. It's something you never lose. I love Tom.
Hi, this is Melissa Dodson with Grief Rights, and you're listening to On the Block Radio.
We just have a few more minutes. I wanted to ask you, if you don't mind, a little bit about the new book and a little bit about, in particular, you mentioned something earlier about the struggles of living with HIV/AIDS, and I wanted to talk to you a little bit about writing about that. This new book has you returning to the subject, and The City of Shy Hunters is a book that John Morrow mentioned in your introduction. Celeste and I introduce people to the subject. We recommend City of Shy Hunters and In the Band Played On as the 2 books that anyone must read on this, and start in that order. And it was a book that was life-changing for me, and I just wondered if you can talk about how the meaning of being someone living with that has changed since Shy Hunters came out and before to now. Well, into how writing about it is different between the two books.
Well, the writing in Shy Hunters, the main character didn't get AIDS. I got AIDS in the middle of it, and had to finish that book. I can remember the day that I got out of bed, wrote one sentence, and then had to go back to bed, and that's why that book took 10 years.
What was the sentence?
The sentence was, a year after Rock Hudson died, I called 911 for Rose.
Holy crap.
Yeah. And so, this book is the first time that I've really had a narrator who has AIDS or is dealing with AIDS. And I think it's important, really, to put it out there in the world to young people or to anybody, really. They think now that there's a pill that... we don't have to use a rubber, or protection. There's a pill now, and all you have to do is take the pill. But, with going through this book and the hell that the narrator goes through, you get to see that what living with HIV can be like and is like for many people. So that was important. But there's also was kind of way I got bit in the ass on this, because I started writing about getting AIDS and the depression that ensued with it. And what happened is it started coming back, the sleeplessness, the depression, all of it. I just brought it all back, and it's really kicked my butt.
Celeste and I recently watched Dallas Buyers Club, and we were talking about it afterwards, and we were talking about the real difference from our perspective was, there's many, but twofold. One was because of the advances in medicine, the cocktail and other things, a diagnosis isn't an automatic death sentence like it was in the 80s. Yeah. And there's a lot of young people that don't remember that time period, where every weekend you're going to a memorial service of one kind or another. And the other is the social stigma attached to it that was still happening with this kind of mass hysteria and the religious fervor and the gay cancer and all that stuff that was happening at the time. And that's not that there's not still all kinds of ugliness out there, but those things have changed as well. And so I'm wondering if you can speak to that. Did that affect at all the writing of this book? I mean, the change in those two things?
In Shy Hunters, so much of the horror of AIDS was the epidemic of it. There was there was an epidemic of fear, as well as an epidemic itself. And so people were just, jumping off buildings, shooting themselves, just because they were just so afraid. So that really affected Shy Hunters. But, now, I go to a clinic downtown, a county clinic, and I get real good health care, and there's no horrible stigma around it. I tell all kinds of people that I have AIDS. Of course, I always have, but there isn't that stigma anymore. There's it's just kind of like it's something to stay away from, and it's something to be careful of. But it's not that old kind of fear that people used to get in their eyes, and they would excuse themselves and leave the room if you told them that you had AIDS. So that's really, really different. And I think, the cavalier maybe way that I talk about AIDS in this is just a way of maybe teaching people how to talk about it. Here it is, and. Pete has, Hank has cancer, and I have AIDS. My narrator has AIDS, and there you go. They're equal in their ways of dealing with mortality.
You said something. There's a line in Shy Hunters, and correct me if I misquote it, but where you say it's the responsibility of the survivors to tell the story. And I was wondering, do you still feel that responsibility?
Oh yeah, I really do. If I got one more book in me, I have a book about Africa that in the Peace Corps time, and it's also going to relate to AIDS and the pandemic in Africa with AIDS, and the fact that I have AIDS now, and it's a very compelling story, and that's one of the main parts of it is that we're all equal, in that sense, and that we all have to face this. This moment of truth of how we're going to die, and there are so many people in Africa who have this virus, and there are so many of us in America who have it, and it's just the common leveler, It just makes us all human beings.
Well, so what's next? What's next? Like, where do you guys go from here? Where's the book tour go?
Let's see.
Tomorrow at Broadway Books in
There's
Portland.
a benefit for marriage equality.
Oregon United for Marriage. It's a benefit.
And then
next week is University of Oregon. A couple interviews going on. Tom's going to be on tomorrow live, 5:20 Pacific time, 8:20 Eastern Standard Time. It's going to be on the Derek and Romaine Show on Sirius XM Radio.
Oh, great.
It's going to be on Speak Out Loud. They're recording it next week.
Okay. The OPB show?
The OPB show.
We're going to Seattle.
We're going to, the 24th, we're in Seattle at Elliott Bay Books. And then New York City, May 13th, baby.
Excellent for a big party, yeah.
At the Gay and Lesbian Center. I'm going to be reading there, and then there's a big party after.
It's part of the 30th anniversary of their Tuesday Night Reader series, where Act Up was born out of.
Oh, wow.
So
I used to go to the Gay and Lesbian Center when I first found out I was HIV positive, and I don't know really if I could even walk back into that room without collapsing, but I'm going to try.
Wow, and that's very brave of you. Actually, I wanted to close with something a bit unorthodox. We're going to sing a song together. No, I'm kidding.
Oh,
that's
not that unorthodox. Celeste and I talked a bit about this yesterday. I was more nervous for this interview than any one I've ever done, and dripping with sweat for this past several weeks, and I've been talking with everyone about it, and I've interviewed a lot of different folks here, and had the pleasure of talking with Pam Houston, with Mark Russell, all kinds of people, and was completely freaked out to do this interview. And I was talking with Lydia Yuknovich and John Morrow about it, and they said, "Oh, no, Tom's a sweetheart." And I said, "Oh, I know that." And then Celeste and I were talking about it, and she said, "You don't have to do anything to impress Tom or Sage. Just go speak with them and be honest." And I said, "Oh, I know that." And then Celeste said, "I wonder if it's the embodied sexuality in Tom's books. I wonder if they're, so I can't tell you how many straight men have come to me with a copy of a book of yours in their hand and said, 'Now I'm straight, but have you read this sex scene here?'" And I said, "I know that. I hope for their sake it's not that."
Give them our number. No.
Yeah. I said, for those listeners, they couldn't see my air quotes around the word straight. But there was something really bugging me about it. Why was I so nervous to sit down with you? And what came to me after thinking a lot about this was thinking about your art, and thinking about how it's hit me since I moved to Portland in 1991, and fastly became aware of your work and the work you're doing here. And I'm a person deeply affected by artists when I can see moments of authenticity and courage in their work. And frequently, if it's an artist I respect, there'll be a flash. If it's a musician or an artist or an author, there'll be these flashes of insight and courage and brilliance that take my breath away and leave me in awe because of the person's rawness, their honesty, their humanity, and their courage. And I realized that your art, there's not a word where it's not doing that to me. And I'm a very slow reader, so it takes me 6 months to read a book. And I don't know how to not breathe for 6 months. And while I'm holding a book of yours in my hand, I can't breathe. And this is not sycophantic. This is not meant to be anything but an honest appraisal of what I think your work means, not only to this community, to the world. So there's no question in this. I just wanted to really take a moment from the bottom of my heart to thank both of you. Having watched the impact that the two of you have had on this community of writers, how many people's lives were changed on a regular basis. We've been going to Burnt Tongue readings for a while now. what you mean to this community is immeasurable. The Thomas Lauderdale reading the other day, the community of artists and poets and teachers and musicians whose lives have been affected by the both of you, and again, in your courage and your honesty is a remarkable thing that I don't know if we can repay. Just today, at your reading here at Mount Hood, there's a student of mine who's very dear to me, a young gay man who is in a horrible relationship with his father and a very abusive relationship with his dad, and his dad doesn't approve of him and his existence, and he just had to move out of his father's house, struggling with all these areas. Had not read your writing before. Lydia and I were begging him to come to the event. He came to the event, was blown away, left with a copy of one of your books, and is completely changed just by the reading. Like just today, I watched another young man's life with these deep issues with his own father, and that resentment change. And so I just wanted to end the interview by thanking you both and thanking you from the bottom of my heart for what you mean to this community. It's really, really remarkable.
Wow. That's I'm kind of speechless with that. Thank you very much. I'll take that in as much as I possibly can. Thank you. That's great.
Thank you, Tom. Thanks, Sage.
Hi there, this is Susie Vitello, and I just want a little shout out to Tom Spanbauer to let him know how much I love him, and he means the world to me. Ever since the early 90s when I first took class with him, and what he introduced me to, new way of writing, new way of thinking, the community that he's built, I just have so much respect and love. The books that he's written are among my favorites. I just can't say enough about how much this man means to me. Tom, we love you.
Hi, I'm Monica Drake, and I was Tom's first student in Portland. And what I mean when I say his first student, I mean I was the first student that stuck with it from his first group. And I'd had a couple other writing teachers before I started in Tom's classes, but I think of Tom as my first teacher in many ways because I stuck with his classes and writing, I stuck with writing because of his particular brand of enthusiasm and support and the way he approached writing as a necessary storytelling. There's one particular day that I always remember, or night, when we were all gathered around the big table at Tom's place, and he said, we're just going to pile up the rejection slips, and he held his hand over the table, gesturing how high our pile of rejection slips would be. And that moment stayed with me through everything I've done. I'm still piling up the rejection slips alongside the acceptances. So it was a way of taking the pressure off the inevitable, that not everything a person writes will be accepted. And that was just an absolutely beautiful moment. When I first met Tom, he immediately let the small group of us know about his own human health and frailer aspects, alongside his bold, vision and worldview, and that combination of knowing that we're all mortal and life is finite, but maybe we can do some pretty cool things while we're here. And we're not in competition for that. We're in community for that. We're working together on it. And those have just been the sort of pillars of my view as a writer that I've carried forward from Tom. So that really meant a tremendous amount. All right. Thank you. And thank you, Tom Spanbauer, so much for sending me on this particular course. I appreciate it. All right. All love. Bye.
You've been listening to On the Block with Andrew Gurovich. The show is produced in Portland, Oregon by Michael DiNapoli at MD Productions. Theme music by Cat Power. Closing music by Jonathan Oak. Look us up on the web at ontheblockradio.com, where you can also link to us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Don't forget to tune in next week for a brand new episode. Previous episodes can be found on our website. Thanks for listening.
Oh, you're beautiful kitty kitties. Oh, look at you out there. Beauty like a bolt, light in a darkened hallway. New minds, looking at this world, at our lives, with the perspective of apocalypse children. Standing dusty in the barren highways, standing broken before the fathers who are meant to make us whole, but who only lied to us about what it meant to be a man, about what it meant to be a woman, about what it meant to be a child of this doomed